The ocean covers 71% of this planet, and we have properly explored less than 20% of it, which means right now, beneath the surface, there are ruins that have been found, documented, and then essentially left alone, sometimes because of politics, sometimes because of money, and sometimes because the people in charge of access have decided the rest of the world doesn't need to know what's down there. Today we're going through 10 underwater ruins that scientists refuse to explore, and in several cases the reason they're not going back is more interesting than the ruins themselves. Let's get into it. In December 2025, less than a year ago, French marine archaeologists published findings about a massive stone structure sitting several meters below the surface off the coast of Fuxian Island in western Brittany. 120 meters long, built from carefully stacked stone blocks, dated to approximately 5000 BCE, making it over 7,000 years old. The researchers believe it was either a Neolithic fish trap or a sea defense structure built by a civilization that understood coastal engineering in ways we didn't think existed at that time. They published the findings, said it was significant, and then nothing. No dedicated follow-up expedition has been announced, no excavation funding confirmed. A 7,000-year-old megalithic structure built by people whose entire civilization is otherwise unknown to us is sitting on the ocean floor off France, and the scientific community's response so far has largely been a shrug and a journal article. Isn't history fun? 11 meters underwater just off the north coast of the Isle of Wight in England, there is an 8,000-year-old Mesolithic settlement sitting on the edge of a submerged river valley. It was originally discovered because a lobster dug into the seabed and pulled up worked timber, the oldest boat building evidence ever found in Britain. Since then, the site has produced something that genuinely shook the archaeological world: ancient DNA from wheat. Not just any wheat, cultivated wheat, traded from the Middle East, found at Bouldnor Cliff 400 years before farming was supposed to have arrived in Britain. That single finding rewrites the entire timeline of how agriculture spread across Europe. And here is the problem: the site sits directly under an active shipping lane. Dive windows are short. Conditions are dangerous, and tidal currents make excavation brutally difficult. The funding for comprehensive study has never materialized. Storms and stronger tides are eroding the seabed up to 4 meters a year. Researchers themselves have called it a race against time that they are currently losing. An 8,000-year-old site that rewrites British prehistory is actively washing away, and nobody has the resources to stop it. In the deepest lake in southwest China, at depths of between 5 and 60 meters, there are ruins, stone-paved streets, elevated platforms, pyramid-like structures, the largest approximately measuring 63 meters wide at the base. Chinese researchers have been aware of them since at least 2001, when a state-sanctioned expedition documented what they found. The results were reported, and the exploration report was promised within 2 months. That was 25 years ago. Since then, independent researchers have not been granted access. The lake is protected, no motorized vehicles permitted on the water, and all research has been controlled through official Chinese channels. What civilization built pyramid structures at the bottom of a Chinese lake, and when, and why nobody outside the Chinese government's approved teams has been allowed back to answer those questions remains unclear. Whether it's the ancient Dian kingdom, something older, or something else entirely, the answer is being kept on a very short leash. Leptis Magna is one of the best preserved Roman cities on Earth, sitting on the Libyan coast east of Tripoli. Most people know the above-ground ruins, the amphitheater, the forum, the arches. What almost nobody talks about is what's underwater. The harbor of Leptis Magna, an extraordinary feat of Roman engineering featuring an artificial basin, a barrage system, and a canal designed to redirect an entire river, is partially submerged, and it contains structures that have never been properly excavated. A team of archaeologists conducted underwater surveys there in 2009 as part of a project to establish underwater archaeological parks in Libya. The results were promising. A comprehensive follow-up was planned. Then, in 2011, the Libyan civil war began. Foreign researchers evacuated, international access to the country effectively collapsed. The conflict has continued in various forms ever since, with shifting governments and ongoing instability, making archaeological fieldwork essentially impossible. The last proper underwater survey of Leptis Magna's harbor was 2009. Whatever Roman engineering and whatever artifacts are sitting in that harbor have been left completely alone for over 15 years. Not because science doesn't want them, but because the country they're in has been at war. Most people don't know that Cleopatra's royal palace sank into the sea following earthquakes in the 4th and 8th centuries, taking statues, temples, and artifacts from one of the most significant reigns in ancient history down with it. The ruins sit in Alexandria's eastern harbor, partially explored by a French archaeological team since the 1990s, which has brought up remarkable finds. But the majority of the site is off limits. Parts of Alexandria's harbor fall under Egyptian military jurisdiction. Permits are restricted and tightly controlled. One of the most historically significant underwater sites in the world is sitting in a harbor that will not let scientists fully in. In 2009, University of Michigan researchers found over 60 stone structures under 100 feet of Lake Huron. Deliberate hunting lanes built for caribou, 9,000 years old, placed here when the ridge was still dry land before the Great Lakes filled. Some of the arrangements are the most complex prehistoric hunting structures ever found in North America. Comprehensive excavation has never happened. Funding is essentially non-existent. The site sits in federal waters where independent diving is restricted. The most significant pre-Columbian archaeological site on the continent might be sitting under a Great Lake, and it has almost no research budget to show for it. In November 2025, archaeologists from the Russian Academy of Sciences announced they had found the submerged ruins of a medieval city at the bottom of Lake Issyk-Kul in Central Asia. Stone-paved streets, fired brick structures, the remains of what appears to have been a significant Silk Road trading hub submerged after a massive earthquake in the 15th century. The city is only 1 to 4 meters below the surface. You could almost stand in it, and here's the detail that makes this genuinely alarming. Lake Issyk-Kul sits in the same region where scientists believe the bubonic plague may have originated in the 14th century before it became the Black Death that killed a third of Europe. The ruins are actively eroding. The lake currents are destroying them, and a comprehensive evacuation has not been funded. They found it in late 2025, and it is already disappearing. In 2000, Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic, discovered an ancient shoreline 300 feet underwater off the Turkish coast with intact wooden structures preserved by the Black Sea's anoxic deep water, where oxygen is so low that almost nothing decays. He believed entire ancient settlements were down there, submerged during a catastrophic flood event roughly 7,500 years ago. A 2018 expedition found a perfectly preserved Greek ship from 400 BCE. Intact mast, rudder, rowing benches, all of it still there after 2,400 years. The prehistoric settlements Ballard originally found, nobody has gone back. The region's politics, Turkey, Ukraine, Russia, make coordinated scientific access essentially impossible. Down there in the dark, in water so still that wood doesn't rot, there may be an entire chapter of pre-flood human history sitting perfectly preserved. We are not currently going back to read it. In 2022, a man named George Gele went public with something that mainstream archaeology has largely refused to engage with. George was an amateur archaeologist from Louisiana. He claimed to have found evidence of a 12,000-year-old city beneath the Gulf of Mexico, specifically near the Chandeleur Islands, a chain of uninhabited barrier islands about 50 miles east of New Orleans. He described large underwater granite mounds arranged in patterns that he says are clearly not natural. Granite that has no geological business being on the floor of the Gulf of Mexico. At 12,000 years old, if the claim held up, it would predate every known civilization on Earth. George published his findings, brought in divers, filmed footage, and asked for professional scientific investigation. The response from the mainstream archaeological community was essentially silence. No institution sent a team, no university funded a survey. The story was picked up by the New York Post in early 2026 and dismissed without formal study. Now, George is an amateur, and the claim is unverified, but here's the part that really bothers me. The granite mounds are documented. They are there, and the scientific community's response to a potential 12,000-year-old city in the Gulf of Mexico has been to not look, which is either the correct response to a crackpot theory or the most expensive shrug in the history of archaeology. In 2001, a team of Canadian and Cuban researchers led by Paulina Zalitsky was conducting sonar surveys off the western tip of Cuba when they picked up something at 700 meters depth. Geometric shapes on the ocean floor, pyramids, roads, the symmetrical outline of what appeared to be a planned city. Sonar images and underwater footage were taken, follow-up expeditions were planned and announced, then funding collapsed. The Cuban government reportedly restricted access. Mainstream archaeology dismissed the sonar images as natural ocean floor geology. Zalitsky maintained her position and could not get institutional backing for a proper investigation. Those formations are still down there, 700 meters deep, completely unexamined by any scientific body willing to commit resources. The sonar images are real, the footage is real, and nobody has gone back, which either means the most significant archaeological discovery in human history is sitting at the bottom of the Caribbean, or someone decided it was better not to find out. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. I need to go spend some time somewhere very shallow and very well documented. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!